So, yeah, we just look forward, Sam, what you're going to share, and may your spirit be on you and speak through you, and bless you and lift you up as it lifts up us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you very much. While I'm doing this, Nathaniel reminded me, there was one time, and I have to tell this story, because it's, I don't know what I'm doing with this, talking about thief on the cross. We were all at Boomtown, and Nathaniel decided to be Jesus on the cross in a manner that would suit Boomtown. So he had a blow-up crown. Sorry, do you remember? Yeah, he had a blow-up crown. Then he asked us to tie him to a stick like a cross. He didn't want an actual cross, just a stick across his thing. So we tied him to this stick. And he had no shirt, this blow-up thing. Then he thought we really needed some blood. And there wasn't anything for blood. All we could find was strawberry jam. So we lagged him in strawberry jam. And off he went, and Nick and I thought, better keep an eye on him, because it's a bit wild in there. So he went running in like this, covered in strawberry jam, into the middle of everything, danced around madly. Then I think the energy got sapped. And then the wasps found him, because they found the strawberry jam. But he couldn't do anything about it, because his hand was stuck to this stick. It was really entertaining. Nick and I were of no help whatsoever. Right, so I think, you see how these are set up, Claire set these up for the old mouldy people.
That's exactly what
And usually the couple. So Katie can't be here by her own design. She really doesn't like the sort of speaking in public, but I'm going to speak for her as well. But I think it's because we're old and we're wise. And I just wanted to say that wisdom is the accumulation. Wisdom is accumulated from many, many individual acts of stupidity. And so as you get older, the more stupid things you've done, the wiser you become. Right from the point of a little child, you say, no hot, and it's a little bit wiser. So that's going to really start. I'm not quite keen with the word hack, by the way, life hacks.
It's just a phrase.
It's a phrase. It's just a phrase, but I remember we used to hack the electric meter before I was a Christian. And it feels like slightly shortcut. I don't know where it is. But anyway, what it really is going for it's things that help you go with the direction. It's not kicking against the thorns, as Paul was doing, or trying to stroke the cat the wrong way. It's trying to do everything. And quite often these things are counterintuitive for things to actually go smoothly and not be. And so I was going to start with 5 different layers and some interspersed with little piffy things. But I was going to start with time. And I think time's a brilliant one. If I got anywhere, I've got my head round time a bit more. So to start off with, this is just a thing about understanding age, is if you are, let's say, 30 now, imagine how much you've learned since you were 20. If you were 20, think how much you've learned since you were 10. Or you're 40, go back 10 years. So if you are 30, those of us who are my age, and Claire and Greg's age and other people, from 30 we've learned that. From what you learned in the last 10 years, we've learned again and again and again. The accumulation of stupid mistakes takes you forward. So it's easy to make the mistake that I used to when I was 20, was to just believe that everything I knew was new and exciting, and that old people were coming from a place back there where things were dark and different, and they didn't understand what you understand now. The shock of it is you find that nothing's really changed, and people think like they do at 60 because they've learnt again and again and again. It's a huge self-deception to think that you know differently, because you will come to the same conclusions by having made the same mistakes, almost inevitably. So, if you have to treat time like sort of water, really, something you live in, and by that same thing, saying that I'm now 60, you realise how long and how much time you actually have. And it's a massive mistake to start to map. Right, I'm going to get onto that actually. Sorry, this is trying to lay these things on top in an order. Let me just actually, let's just there was a thing about time which was fascinating. I learned when I used to do a train to be work in disaster relief, overseas development, and you assume that everybody has the same attitude towards time. So I was in a big international group, and they said, right, and you can do this now, everyone. Pick a circle. There's a big circle, a middle-sized circle, and a small circle, and allocate one of those in importance, big, most important, middle and small. Allocate those in what place you would put them for your future, for the present, and for the past. And lots of people, especially in Western Europe, do big for the future, middle size for the present, small for the past. And that's a pretty standard thing, and everybody's nodding their heads. That's quite uniquely different to a lot of the world. India, the big circle goes at the back, and the little circle goes at the front. That what you are and what you come from. So just all I'm saying that for, it's not something necessary to learn or one is better. To understand concepts of time are very, very different. And we treat time like a corridor we're passing along, and other people treat time like a swimming pool they're swimming around. Yeah? But at the same time of having said there's this vast amount of time, the essence and the most important thing, and it really is, okay, life hack, and this is what the hippies used to say, is now is the happiest time of your life. And they're not saying that today is the happiest time, or this 10 minutes, or this month, or anything. They're saying this nanosecond, this one little piece of Planck time, where your existence is touching time, are both touching. So no expectation of future or past. This millisecond that we're all experiencing, if you live in that, that's where you are most happy. Not in the future, not projecting to the future, not worrying about the past, not saying when or anything. It's occupying the moment that and that's where prayer is. That's when you're in prayer. But that's. Let me tell you about Katie, because she's not here, and I said that I would. And I'm just going to tell you how I met Katie. And it does sort of come in. I think I haven't told this story, I think, here, but it was at the time of the first Gulf War. I was in Israel, and it seemed that Saddam Hussein was going to launch gas rockets, Scud missiles. And very nicely I was asked, look, you can't really do anything here. You'd be in the way, or we'd have to look after you if these things start dropping. Probably best to go back. So I came back to the UK. Had to go quickly to Plymouth to put some money in the bank to get friends out who were stuck in Israel, pay some money to get them out. But I thought, I am not going to get stuck in Plymouth. I left from Plymouth. I am not going to get stuck in Plymouth. So I went to the bus station. I went there by bus, went to the bank, did what I had to do, went back to the bus station, and sat there and momentarily said to God, you know, God, actually, I have been single since I gave my life to you, celibate. But I would like to share my life, I think, with somebody. Never said that before, because I actually never thought it was a very good idea. The idea of running a 3-legged race wasn't a good one. I wouldn't go nearly so fast. If you get out of kilter, boys, you're going to get hurt. End up sitting on the ground with your leg, you know, in all sorts of packing. So I wasn't, but I said this very quickly. And waiting for the bus, 10 minutes later, not even that, 2 minutes later, girl ran past, an audible voice spoke in my ear and said, that's her.
Oh my
Right, we'll get back onto that. So,
And was that Kate?
That was Katie.
that was Kate. Yeah.
You're playing the long game.
Yeah. Right. So, if we got all this time, what are we aiming for? And I think one really useful thing I've learned is, I'm going to now contradict myself. You say if you aim at nothing, you hit it. So you want to aim for something, but at the same time, I'd say don't really. What I learned not to do is not to map the future. Now, if someone's giving you directions, and you're sitting there and they say, you drove by the huge tree, past the yellow house, up a river, and you're imagining it in your mind, and you're making all that big tree, and a yellow house, and a little bridge, and a stream, and you've got this picture. When you actually travel along the road, because you don't see the big tree as you imagined, you don't see the big tree, you don't see the yellow house, and you don't see things because you've mapped. And that's exactly what you can end up doing if you start mapping your future. I'm going to, and you give yourself a trajectory. I want to do this with my life and this going here. I remember at the age, I was very, very keen to become an actor. But I suddenly, just at a young age, and I think I had met Jesus, but I hadn't changed. I'd had an encounter. But I remember thinking, so I think this is God's working in me, thinking, if I get on this trajectory, it will go up, it will reach the top, it will plateau, and it will fall. And I thought, well, that's a waste of time. That's a waste of life to do that, for that to be. Your trajectory has to be going up and up and up and up and up. So, we're always being told we're running a race. But I think what I find is necessary to aim for is nothing more than those words, well done, good and faithful servant. That's sort of it. And everything else is incidental on the way. And thus you free yourself up for all sorts of unexpectednesses. Now you have to plan to a degree, of course, but you hold them very, very lightly. And you don't seek to ask God to intervene and manage your plans. You give it all over and allow God through your life, and watch how your plans change and unexpected, because you will constrain yourself. You will go along the path expecting the red house and you don't see it. You miss it because you've made a rather small map of what is going on. So anyway, this girl goes running past and hides behind a bin and is crying. And I thought, oh, well, this is rather odd. It's rather awkward. What do I do now? No more voice, that's the end of it. So I sort of went up. Hello, are you okay? And evidently not. The first thing I thought, was, at least she's pretty. I'm thinking that. But she wasn't. And so I think some of you here, especially the girls, might be inclined to think that this is a romantic story. But it really isn't. It's not that. Kate was here, she would like probably to have people imagine her like the pre-Raphaelite painting of a lady, what's her name? The Lady of Shalott. In the, floating on the water with roses around her. But she wasn't. She had jet black hair, all dyed black. She was 17, I was mid-20s, just nearly turning 18. And I remember these lovely words from a poem, which I'm going to read later, but not that bit. He's describing ducks, and he describes these topaz-tinted eyes, that wish you ill, and that's what sort of looking out of this, everybody, very, very uncomfortable with everybody, but anyway. So the third thing was, so we got time, we got this funny thing that we got with time, we got a target that sort of is outside of that, anyway. And then the other thing, Well, if we're running the race, you see, all the way through, let's do Hebrews 12, because I actually marked it out and I end up not reading anything, so I just end up talking. But it's so often, all the way through, they're talking about running a race. Paul talks about running a race, doing this thing, this. So therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great crowd of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. The joy set before I go on and on, actually. But this whole thing of running a race, and it brings us on to the third point, is what does winning look like? And if you're winning all the way through, if you're racing. Now there's a really interesting study, and I think that I think you might have introduced this once. I know I've heard it before, but I went over and looked at it again because it's so fascinating. They studied people, two sets of people, one set of people who had just won the lottery, and the other set of people who had just undergone an amputation. And they did a sort of understanding where they'd been before this sudden life-changing event had happened to them. They mapped them where they were then, and the lottery people were super happy, and the amputees were pretty unhappy. It didn't take very long for those lines to come back and meet again. And they were pretty much where they were before that seemingly life-changing event had happened. Hadn't really changed their life. Their baseline happiness hadn't altered a jot. And it's really interesting for getting a life hack is to realizing that your circumstances won't affect your happiness. Not the job, not the marriage, not the thing. It won't affect the fundamental person that you are. And you can waste an awful lot of time hoping for the future, mapping the future, where you might have this event that might change you, and then you'll be happy. And when I get married, then I'll be happy. And you find yourself sitting in the middle of the racetrack with a twisted ankle, and somebody very angry next to you can't get apart from.
Talking from experience.
I know. Lots and lots of stupidity. So then what the purpose is, what the winning looks like, is what we've done. Oh, Nick, I got that photograph of the old fruit. There we are. What we are becoming. And the object of what winning likes is to become soft and sweet. That's the only purpose we are here to be.
Tasty.
Is to become desirable, to be plucked,
Orange.
and worthy of the eternal. Worthy of always being. Because we have, you can, and so all that we have in this time that we live in this race that we run, is myriads and myriads of decisions to make. We wake up and the first thing, decision, we wake up. All we are little things that calculate and make decisions. And the decisions that we make will make us sweeter or more bitter, make us softer or make us harder. And this is what we're doing. This is what winning looks like. And this is what, when you start to alter these and win these, then your baseline happiness changes. Irrespective of your circumstances, good or bad. That's what's so striking. Good or bad. I'm just going to do one thing, Galatians. It's not great in this translation, and better in the NIV. But we talk about a lot of things, but it just does worth bringing up. Galatians 5:22. The fruits of the Spirit. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, it says in this, but long-suffering in most other places. Kindness, goodness, faithful, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. But it's the forbearance, it's the long-suffering. And just going back to questions of time, living in the moment a long time, how do you think you learn long-suffering? By suffering long. not a shortcut. That is part of it. But it doesn't change your attitude. In actual fact, in the circumstance, the cauldron of long suffering, it actually can elevate you to softness and to sweetness very quickly. Now, I don't know, does God make you suffer? No, I don't know if that is the case at all. But I do know that it is in your hands to use that and make the correct decisions in those circumstances to be really made soft, to be really made sweet. It's I love it. Because you know that where there's smoke, there might be smoked salmon. That's Rabbi Lionel Blue, lovely man. But yeah, that's the attitude. That's the attitude. So, number 4 was expect goodness. This is the understanding of God. Your expectation has to be of goodness. I think, did I give you a Romans verse, 8:28 through 30? That very rarely do I put things up, because I think it's a distraction from just reading it. But this, we won't all read it out, because I think that's distracting, but get it. This you can tattoo on anywhere you want on your body. You can fix this to yourself. It talks about binding the word of the Lord. I mean, that they put those little boxes and everything they do, literally bind the word. But bind these words to you. Because in every circumstance, all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purposes. For God foreknew, we go on to that, by the way, the foreknowing in a minute. But that bit, for all things, and that's not a just nice, pithy little piece to go. That is a fundamental law of once you've entered into his, through the Narnia wardrobe, into life with him, is that everything happens, works together for good. There are no more bad events. There are events that propel you to sweetness or whatever, but it all works together for good. It makes creation. It's the necessity of understanding the nature of God is, and I really concur with that word. I was almost going to say, I think God is saying he yearns for us to know his nature. I didn't know because I was preaching on that, whether it was me tainting it. So I didn't. I just go on this because I'm just going to throw in a little bit. For those things God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. We are being made into Jesus, into children, into holy, divine God children. That might be the firstborn amongst many brothers and sisters. For those he predestined, he also called, and those he called, he also justified, and those he justified, he also glorified. Put that down. And just a couple of things, because it's so interesting time, and this is something that I find fascinating anyway, so I opened up with it, is how can you have predestination and free will running concurrently? It's an anomaly. But what's so extraordinary, and this is science, I'm going to be quite quick on this, and if it doesn't get you, let it pass, don't worry about it. But when, in time, when the universe was created, this is not Christianity or religion, this is science. When it was created, space was created, and at the same time, time was created. Now we treat time like a corridor we walk along, but in actual fact, scientifically, the future was created, and the past was created, and the present was created. It was all created at the same time. It was, just because you haven't seen the next galaxy doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just because you haven't seen tomorrow doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It does exist. It always exists. The end is already seen, is known. So oddly enough, God knows the end because it was created at the same time as everything was, and yet we're living through free will at this moment. It's extraordinary, but that's almost an aside. I'd love to do something on that at some point, but that, I don't know why they don't teach it at school. But to get this transformation and to know that all things work together, it's terribly important to get the nature of God, is to understand God's nature, that what we're being transformed into. Because otherwise it's hard to trust when we're having to suffer for a long time. And so I know that a lot of people, for example, struggle with the idea of God as a father. And so I would say, okay, well, forget your father. Imagine for yourself what the perfect father would be. Imagine what the perfect father would be. Imagine the perfect father. We're not talking about God, we're talking about the person. Not your father, just imagine what a perfect father would be. When you were down and needed encouragement. Imagine that. Imagine the perfect father when you'd really made a bad mistake and gone and said, look, I really made a bad mistake. And their love and their manner to you brings you up and makes you feel great. And it's okay. And imagine that perfect father when you're playing and being very, very silly and it's funny. And it's a romp. My father was great. In some respects, he was terrible. He honestly thought a good 16th birthday present was 200 cigarettes. I kid you not. He thought good parenting was passing the joint past you when you were about 14. But at the same time, he was so much fun. I mean, I watched him with his smaller children. He had a couple of families, but I love him to bits. It was him sitting on the floor with a motorbike helmet and his 4-year-old Pip with a bit of 4B2 running across the road and whacking him across the head with it. And him doing this huge theatrical thing and Pip falling, howling and laughing and laughing and laughing. It was so funny. And that was, so how can my father, physical father, who was rubbish at some things, could be more fun and more of a father than God, who is perfection? That's not possible. He can't be more than God. More fun, more romps, more games, more irreverence. Ever. And if you want to mix it up again, think about maybe a 7-year-old girl with a kitten. Who adores a little kitten, won't leave it alone. Mix that in with the mix to start to get an image. The early Christians, Jesus would come to them as a child, often. Then Christopher, you know, you have on the key ring, used to carry people across the river to the church. Didn't have a bridge, and when the river was running hard, people, and he was a big old boy, so he could put them on his shoulder and carry them up. The perfect example of what it is to be a Christian. And one day this child came and said, can you carry me over? And he was carrying the child over, and it was Jesus. It was God. It was the one who made the universe. Was as a child. And the same one who came into the universe asked us to receive him as a child. So, I didn't know what to do with this girl. I mean, there was no sort of, emotion going with it. I thought, oh God, this complete stranger. And are you all right? And, not. Where are you living? Living in a barn with witches. Not a good environment. and I said, well, I had friends who lived nearby. Do you want to come have a cup of tea and just sit? So, cup of tea. And I couldn't get rid of her. It's like picking a stroke, this puppy. It just had nowhere to go, no family really to speak of. And just had to follow me around. Was evidently very unwell. Like I say, it wasn't romantic. There was, had eating problems, severe eating problems. severely not eating anything whatsoever. So it slowly became more and more apparent that they only ever wanted to drink water, and was declining week 2, week 3. And I was sort of had to go back, and people I knew had a bit of like a community house actually. We went there and had to look after this person week 3, and suddenly got a phone call from Turkey. Said, "What's happened?" I said, "I don't know." What do you mean, what's happened? And Kate came running down and said, "That's it, I'm going to eat." And something, they said, "Oh yeah, somebody we knew in Turkey who had met Kate very briefly before they went back missionaries, had been praying non-stop and been fasting and praying, and just felt the Holy Spirit say, yeah, broken." At that moment she came running. Funny old thing.
This is very romantic.
Yeah. So, number 5 is knowing that what we're to do is to get soft and sweet. Knowing that what we're being transformed into is somebody who thinks children are great. Then it's learning to really laugh. When was the last time, do you remember as a child, laughing? I shouldn't say as a child, but I'm probably going to have to. Do you remember as a child laughing so much that it gets frightening, that you're running out of air and it hurts and it's getting funnier? That's where we're heading. That's what it's all about. Everything is very, very... Right, one more life tip. I'll give another one, because I thought when I got the subject, I know, Viz are great for top tips. Do you remember Viz top tips?
Yeah.
Anyone?
Yeah.
Very profane.
Yeah.
The only one that I could find that was suitable for this environment was to say, motorist, hide your telephone inside a large conch shell. So when you're driving down talking on your thing, if they photograph it, you can claim that you were just listening for the sea. My own one is, and this does work, is learn to say, "That's outrageous," in that sort of force. Because if you have people, and you do meet people who do tend to moan and want to tell you all their problems. And I used to do it with my neighbour who, is mad as a box of frogs, but endlessly complains. And she comes along and her hair hasn't been done at the things, and she says, "That's outrageous!" And they're shocked that you're so forceful how outraged you are, thrilled that you understand where they're coming from. Because if they don't get that satisfaction, they'll keep on. And then actually they'll end up slightly defending the people. So it's really a great one. I would wish Barney was here. The Bowker children would be brilliant at this. Anyone up for it? Giving it? Got to be done with force. That's outrageous! Anyone?
Let's all do it together.
Nathaniel.
Yeah.
That's outrageous! You're an actor.
Should we all do it together?
All do it together. 1, 2, 3. That's outrageous! Right, then go and use that. Go out there and use that. Really important. It's just like a wonderful key. So just to end. So on Tuesday, with this funny girl that I met on the road, 3 children later, grandchild now, 35 years ago, we were laughing that it got frightening and I couldn't get enough air and my stomach was hurt. It was working out who would actually, someone, and I can't remember which one way round, actually did get caught having had the phone charger all along and denying that they did. But it got very, very, very funny. Now, there's no reason, we're not different, we're as children, that we shouldn't be thus laughing. You grow away from it. Nothing changes, things are just as funny. It's just maybe you just stiffened up a little bit as time went on. And so the urgent ask is that we soften up and find that again. Life tip. Find the humour. Find the ridiculous. Look for the sense of the ridiculous. because God will always make jokes. And if you're not expecting it, you'll miss them. And God won't make jokes because you haven't got a sense of humour until you develop it, until you expect it, until you're living with somebody who's funny and who enjoys the humour and is childish in their nature. And we're encouraged to be as children. I was looking at that for that piece of poetry that had those topaz tinted eyes that wish you ill. And that was actually somebody writing about ducks. He was in a prisoner of war camp in really rather nasty circumstances. And the first, when you're in horrible places, your mind turns to things. And he just wrote the funniest poem ever about ducks. It's called Will Harvey. But I'm just going to end on the last. I didn't realise, I hadn't read it for years, and I forgot the last verse. So I'm just going to do the last verse. And it says, when God had finished the stars and world of coloured stars and coloured suns, he turned his mind from big things to fashion little ones, beautiful, tiny things like daisies. And then he made the comical ones. In case the minds of men should stiffen and become dull, humourless and glum, and so forgetful of their maker, be as to take themselves quite seriously. Caterpillars and cats are a lively and excellent pun. All God's jokes are good, even the practical ones. And as for the duck, I think God must have smiled a bit, seeing those bright eyes blink on the day he fashioned it. And he's probably laughing still at the sound that came out of its bill.
What's that called?
I'll push it. Oh, we don't have a newsletter anymore. We all forget.
No, I've written it. I think maybe
We do. MailChimp's not working.
Yeah.
Um,
It's coming.
it's coming.
It is
It's coming. That is called Ducks, and it's by F.W. Harvey.
All right.
Yeah, but it's lovely from the beginning. So that's it. Don't forget to laugh. It's fun. It's lots of fun.